What's up? Benton, Benton here. How y'all doing? What's happening? As always, my distinct honor and pleasure to be addressing you fine folks tonight or this morning. I think I've given up on the battle of you know, talking about how folks are up all night, and then I'm one of the few people who goes to bed super early, and all of those dynamics. You've won, the night people. You've won. Although, shout out to Music Called the Secret. Hope he's here. He can. There's a few of us early birds out here anyway. Saw the Yurt fellow was live last night. Interesting to see him in a different time zone. Or a different time slot. I was asleep, of course. So looking forward to catching up to that replay. I guess I need to clean my lens here. It's just looking kind of crazy. Hang on. Yeah. Much better. Much better. What's up, Rachel? Yes, indeed. Present. Music Holds a Secret. You know, it's interesting. I'm starting to feel entitled, man, because you're always here, right? I'm like, where is he? Oh, he must be doing stuff. I went live in the other time zone. So, man, I appreciate it, brother, that you're. It is support for sure. Somebody said that yesterday. We support you. Because I've been going through it, man, and you know, as fellas, we don't always want to dwell on that, but certainly been going through it, whatever that means. But don't cry for me, Argentina. Part of me likes it, certainly. Part of me likes it, to be sure. But yeah, been doing a lot of thinking about the content, the streams, the vlog, right? Which is not even really supposed to be a vlog. And I didn't even argue with that gal that one day. She said, "Oh, a vlog. Yeah, a vlog. Mundane, as Christos would characterize it. And if I am a sensitive artist, if that is a real thing, I'll kill this camera real quick. If that is a real thing, you know, I would certainly be repelled at the level of my own creative, you know, whatever my own artistic aesthetics are, would generally be repelled by just something as mundane as a blog, which certainly can be interesting. And I have some notes once we get to the picnic tables. Maybe that will help out. So what if this does amount to a hill of beans? That's a good question. You know, I'm not prepared for that. That was part of what I was thinking about this morning, trying to, you know, doing my preparation, which is for this broadcast, which some days is like almost like a panic mode, like, oh my God, I have nothing, but not really, because I know I can just talk until I hit on to something, right? Presumably. But yeah, so what if this does amount to a hill of beans? Grind them up and cut your coffee budget. Okay. Yeah, we're almost out of coffee beans. That's an interesting one. Will Benton purchase more coffee beans? Stay tuned to the vlog. What the fuck? Ah, hey, Jackie. Good to see you. Hey, there's the man. I think about obscenity sometimes. I got a call from a number one day. I thought, I wonder if this is obscenity. I don't know if I just don't have his number, or did I'm so disorganized on the phone sometimes, or did I? Because there are a few folks who want to attempt to contact me by the phone. Sorry if I'm busting you out there, obscenity, but good to see you, by the way. I know he's up to big things in his life. Again, people tell me stuff, and I never really know what I can say or what I can't say. Good to see you, sir. Definitely been thinking about you here and there. Yes, early morning blessings, and that was another thought I've been having was, you know, just the positive mental attitude in general and how important that is, you know, irrespective of what's actually happening, right? Oh, okay, yeah. I'm gonna catch up on that then. I figured you did. There's no excuse, sir, but I've chosen to be super disorganized of late. Definitely. Yeah, don't say much, exactly. So for me, that ends up being just a version of don't say anything. I'm super good at that. Just shut the fuck up and don't say anything, right? Which is a bit counterintuitive considering how much I come on here and run my yap. but I know how to just not say things. Indeed. And the small victories of life, right? Like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, goodness. Going through some emotional bullshit. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's never really expected my life to be that, right? Dealing with emotional stuff. Goodness. So, yeah, man. Maybe we can get into that sometime. Although the fellas just laugh at me when I'm like, hey, man, if you ever need to talk, I'm a good listener. When I can really tell somebody's having some problems. And if it's a guy, they almost always laugh at me. So I think I've more or less just stopped offering, as far as I can tell. It's like, come on, man. I mean, I'm a human being. Like, and then it shows you some of the issues around how men are socialized or how males are socialized. You know, if you're going through hell, just keep going type of thinking, right? Just put my head down and suffer in silence, right? But obviously, we or individuals can be more effective. Even if there's no actual solution to talking to somebody. I mean, I think we all know by now it does help, right? And that's part of what I'm doing here on these things is, uh, it definitely helps me to verbalize a lot of these things and just sort of get them out there. The old cliche of get it off your chest, right? Whip back into shape. I don't know what that means. I think maybe obscenity is doing physical labor. That might be what he's talking about. Uh, yeah. What's up? What's up? Grind them up and cut. I'm still trying to figure out what music holds a secret mint on these coffee beans. Part of my know-it-allness is I act like I know shit, but I may not. Oh, and I saw since I'm all over the place already, I saw that Ice Grills. My bad. Driving and lurking. Hey, good to see you, Mr. Grills. As always. Apologies. But yeah, Rachel. Thank you. She says good to see you again. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah. So, likewise, although I'm not seeing you necessarily. I don't know. It's a strange thing. Strange thing. Having friends, like virtual friends, but I don't really know you, and I mean, I guess y'all know me more than I know you, but I'm okay with it, right? People are people on some level, and you can certainly get to know someone through just their comments to some extent. What's up, Gary? Good to see you, sir. And I'm just rambling now, so apologies. I'm trying to make it to the picnic table so I can uh, check out the notes. Then I get into like the YouTube, the live streaming and the views, and it's just natural to compare ourselves to other people. And my thing, I run into this thing where several different times this has happened where I sort of take off in popularity on the internet, but not, never in like a viral way, but certainly like compared to other people, I've noticed that I can have it's fairly easy for me to get a lot of attention in some ways. But then, maintaining that or even caring to maintain it, or, I'm just going to say shit sometimes. Like I might just decide to do some breathing exercises and run off half the audience, like without really knowing that that's what's going to happen, all these dynamics. And now I'm looking at some of these other channels. And ultimately I don't really care, meaning it's not my concern, but I'm like, damn, what's wrong with me? Like there is a tendency to internalize some of that stuff. But I like to see other people do well. Like I want all these channels I want them to have double the views. I mean, and that's a real thing. Um, but then obviously monitoring my own progress. But then I'm thinking, well, shit, man, your content has been kind of trash here for a while. So I don't really want people, some people are going to rock with me no matter what. But, Yurt should be getting views. And I like to see that. Sometimes I'm confused. It's like, why aren't there more people in here? But, which is part of my thing for the grinding of the live streams is like, yeah, I want my attention. I don't have to have it. I'm not Jack Talcott. Like I know how to cope with my life if I'm not getting showered with praise and people are hanging on my every word. Not that they are, but, it's easy to sort of get into that space of, self-congratulatory, or, oh, my shit don't stink, or, yeah, 60 people listened to me talk on the internet one day. It's like, who cares, man? Who cares? Who cares? What if it's not quite legal? I don't know. Now I'm lost again. That happens sometimes, though. There you go, Rachel. I almost can't deal with the IRL stuff as far as the levels of phoniness, and I know exactly what you mean there. Yeah, Rachel, for sure. No reason to hold back, really. Yeah, and that's I do hold back. That's what's kind of crazy is like I reveal a lot of stuff, but I definitely hold back sometimes. I think I don't know, just something we seem to need to do as people. But I've realized I'm on the kind of the far end of somebody who will just say a bunch of stuff. It's the groceries in the parking lot of the supermarket is what I call it. I heard that somewhere and it stuck with me. Well, but then again, I'm still not putting everything out there, right? Yeah, there's a freedom in that, for sure. Freedom in that. And then legal, obscenity. We get into things that, might trigger you a little bit around, well, policy and code, right? So called. And then, the law is written and, God's law, or if we want to call it that, universal law. The reality is, man, you're born into a fucking realm. And, I don't want to speak anything too specific. I don't want to blow up obscenity spot there, but certain activities, just in my view, no human being has any sort of authority or right to say, hey, you can't do that thing with that material, right? And that's about as much as I want to say, uh, about specifics. But it's like, how can we all be here as people, and then other people can tell me that I'm not allowed to, manipulate or work with various materials that are just here, by the way. They're here in the realm. Nobody invented them, nobody created them. Well, I can't say nobody, but you know what I mean. The shit's always been here as far as I can tell. Like that's just the insanity that humans even accept that, right? Being told what to do at the level of again, working with fucking materials that are here. Like it doesn't make any sense. Even like the vape here. It's like how can a collection of human beings tell me that, well, hey, this substance, it really works for Benton right now. It's, not in the long run, it's not going to, but talking about the THCO, what, how can anybody say anything about that? I'm actually confused. Now I understand that, quite the opposite is happening, right? And how many people have been locked in cages? And I'm not even trying to grandstand. I just mean like, this is one of the many things the realm does that we all just have decided makes sense. Well, and I would challenge obscenity a little bit because I know at times he's a little resistant to some of these ideas around the Paul and slave type of material. But ultimately, like, what are we even talking about? Just born into a system, and we just all agree that's okay. This is the way to go. I don't get it, man. It's confusion. And I think I was saying this to Robert Escobar when he kept, and I understand what he's doing with trying to get people to register a Green Party or whatever. But my thing is, look, until whatever this is out here at the level of man's kingdom and problem solving and how to live the best life and all of this stuff, until that thing proves to me that it gives a flying fuck about my input, I'm just going to consider that it's, I'm just here and I got to deal with it the best I can. Like, I'm not willing to go with some notion that, oh, well, Benton's complaining or noticing various aspects of society, so now he's obligated to come up with the solution. It's like, well, what are you talking about? What has this thing ever done to indicate that it wants any input from me whatsoever, as far as, my ideas of what may or may not make the world a better place, which is not a thing that I think can be done personally, but if I'm willing to accept that premise, right? it's just, and people will just run with these ideas. I've noticed if you just give a person an idea, most of the time they'll run with it. So, like if I think I'm all of a sudden I'm in some sort of discussion about the realm or the politics or Benito Mussolini's helicopter hand, the next thing you know, people are trying to put me in a position to like solve the fucking ills of the realm. It's like, well, number one, when did I, what, like it's just such a bizarre thing. And it is the tactics of the left, by the way, lest we forget, because people don't notice, man, that this really started during Obama. One of Obama's big political strategies was at these town halls and all these rallies and stuff, and, there was a big media blitz. And, the idea that Obama came out of nowhere and all this, which is literally impossible, by the way. Nobody can come out of nowhere and become the U.S. president. It's literally impossible. So, obviously, he's the system's boy in a lot of ways. And it's not about Obama. We know they're all predators, right? All, the R's and the D's, they're all trash. We know that. Again, we've lost audience over me, throwing a fit over a 5-minute Bill Maher clip I tried to play, but people wanted to go on and on about how he's a predator. I'm like, look, they're all predators. Donald Trump, predator. All of them. So the ones that we, maybe I get along with, or the idea of, well, who would you want to have a beer with? Yeah, that's a predator. So I don't want to have a beer with any predators. So yeah, I don't want to have a beer with Bill Maher. I don't want to hang out and be his buddy. But if he makes some good points here and there, I'm happy to play his clip, right? So that I can then riff on it. If that makes sense. Not to be like, oh, well, we got to make sure everybody knows what he's been up to in his private life. Like, yeah, that's all of them. That's literally all of them. Every single one of them that's promoted by this system, period, end of story. So what are we even talking about? Now, and I don't mind. We'll just make sure to say it every single time it's a famous person. We got to remind everybody, yeah, they're probably a predator. And I'm saying predator in a very specific sense. And again, look, I can't even say the words anymore. Imagine trying to explain to a 12-year-old Benton that, in 30 years or however many years, he would not be permitted, or it would no longer be, really acceptable to, refer to certain activities, just to call them what they are, right? Because I should just be able to say, there's two words that are perfectly describe what I'm talking about. And we almost never hear those words, right? And even going back to the Sandusky stuff, I remember being, Joe Paterno's, the whole thing at Penn State. And I remember just being like listening to all these media accounts, and I followed that story very closely for a long time. And it was like, I was confused at a certain point. I was like, why can't we just call it what it is? And there's two words I'm not even going to say now. It's like, well, because we can't. And I think I was confused because that was a while ago now. It was like 07 or something. I'm not good with years, so I'm not exactly sure. But what's up, slow boy? Been thinking about you too. How about that? Now I'm wondering, that same pickup truck's here every morning. I wonder if that thing's broke down, or maybe that's security or something. Although I never see them moving. Yeah, well, see, again, there's no such thing as out of nowhere, but the system, exactly, Gary, and I'm not disagreeing with you. The system loves to promote the idea of these people coming out of nowhere. Jerry Yang, same thing, right? It's a common trope of the system, and the system really, for whatever reason, wants us to believe in the idea of, anybody can be president and all. It's like, what? No. Anybody who cremates their care, possibly, and then again, not anybody, obviously. But howdy, Catch 22. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hey, we finally made it. Almost 20 minutes to get over here. Slowing down in my old age. I'm liking this 3 a.m. though, I gotta say. This is working out a little better, I think. At least in some ways. Yeah. Oh, man. Whew, the next to last vape. I'm kind of ready to be done with this, to be honest. So I don't even know how long it's been vaping the THCO. What's up, Pale Horse Rider? But yeah, back to what I was talking about with the all the attention and which it has sort of peaked out a few different times, if y'all remember. But over time, I've experienced this thing where at least some groups of people are kind of enamored with my personality, but I recognize it as such. But then, I do have some of the Talcottian stuff where I talk about, that he has to interact with people. And, my view is that he is literally suffers from an existential crisis, and that he, at a very infantile level of emotionalism, it really seems to him like if people won't interface with his personality, then maybe he doesn't actually exist. Now, I don't have that version of it, thank God, but I've always responded very favorably and positively to attention, right? Which kind of sounds basic. It's like, what are you talking about? Everybody responds to, everybody likes attention. Well, I mean, I can't say everybody likes it necessarily. Some folks are. I'm just probably way too comfortable with it in some ways. And again, just like almost everything, I'll tell. And since it's my vlog, right? Welcome to my vlog, which shouldn't be a vlog, but when the level of content drops too low, but and the forgetfulness, man, this is not. I've always had a little bit of this, but this is nuts. And again, so this is part of the problem, but it's not the entirety of it. So it's like, so I do the broadcast yesterday, and then in a couple hours later, I'm just remembering all of the things that I started to talk about and never quite talked about. Being like, well, no wonder nobody wants to watch this thing, man. Because hypothetically, it should be, if I was doing my job as a content creator, we would be seeing, as we have seen at times over the channel's history, more or less a consistent growth, and that seems to have stopped. But that's okay. I know I'm in a transitional time. And realistically, my job on a daily basis is just not to freak out. I almost freaked out this morning, y'all. I almost freaked out, but I talked myself down. I'm getting really good at these processes. My body, like, there's a moment where I'm starting to work with this. I've talked about this idea of having like these racing thoughts and anxiety and trepidation. But for me, I don't usually have that. But if I do, it's like first thing in the morning, right when I wake up. And then I've just figured out over time through observation that I believe, at least with me, that it's actually physiological, that my body, for whatever reason, is going into certain states. And then my mind, as a reaction, is like picking things that are valid, but to be like overly worried about, right? Yeah, the windmill. I was just thinking about that. Yeah. I'm outside a store. I was just thinking about that windmill. I like it, kind of. I could have like a halo. Yeah, well, I'm on the meat now, so yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm well, and what people don't realize, I think it's hard for people to relate to what I've been going through, but my ability to absorb nutrients and calories has been very much affected for over a year now. So it's like some measure of healing and patience and progress, just small progress over time. Now I'm probably more able to assimilate some of the nutrients. Because remember, for like an entire year, I haven't eaten meat, and I've been a big meat eater my whole life for the most part. Especially was a big red meat eater for the last several years, whatever. And didn't have a desire for it. So just recently, because we all know, like, especially if one is actually in semi-starvation like I am, we already know that, meat, there's a reason why it smells so good, and our bodies have like almost like a visceral reaction just to being around cooked meat, right? And so I'm starting to have that again. I did not experience that. I could be around cooked meat and it did nothing for me. So, which to me kind of indicates like my body probably knew, like, hey, we can't really do anything with that anyway. And then just the biles, just that one issue of my bile has been such a serious thing. So I think it's now my body's like, okay, we can have some meat. And the amount of meat I've eaten recently I would have been in bed for two solid days with half the amount of meat I've been able to eat
at one sitting lately. So yeah, there's definitely improvement. So thank you. I appreciate that. I can tell I'm not necessarily that I'm coming back to whatever I used to be, because I don't even know that I would want to be whatever that was again anyway. But as far as it's mainly about my brain, honestly. It's like I can definitely tell just the animal fats and the diet, in the saturated fat, the dietary cholesterol, the eggs too, though. Before that, because I haven't been on the eggs that long either, the egg yolk. So yeah, it's one thing at a time, and you know, in spite of my own trepidation and whatever I go through, emotionally, and then my living situation being up in the air and all of this upheaval and disorientation and all of that. But I'm comfortable with it. I thrive on it also. So I'm kind of in this limbo right now, just where like I'm still have a roof over my head to some extent. I have money in my pocket, but that's all about to stop. But not in a temporarily, I should say. It's for the transition, and then I'm obviously going to have to secure some kind of, and that's all going to work itself out naturally as it will have to, um, versus me trying to impose some kind of structure on it ahead of time. But I certainly squandered some opportunities to sort of manage this process. This ties into what Machine Lives was talking about yesterday. I popped into the end of his broadcast, and that sort of reminded me that I am pretty decent at dealing with a lot of these ideas, especially compared to a lot of the people in the YouTube streets. I do seem to have a particular sort of thing I can do at the level of ideas, and I put enough knowledge in my brain. Me and him were kind of riffing on technology and Ted Kaczynski and a lot of these various ideas, intellectual and pseudo-intellectual conversation. Which, by the way, that I need the other person to know some shit. So, like, the Machine Lives probably recognizes, hey, Benton is not some fucking high-level intellectual, but I'm a person that I know enough things that, like, when he goes on his half of the conversation, when he's on his side of the conversation, I can add just enough things to it from my own off the dome knowledge to sort of have an interesting back and forth, even if just from the live chat, right? And this has been my dynamic with a lot of these content creators. Yurt, same thing. Even Paul, to some extent, I was potentially a bit of an enigmatic figure in his live chat, at least initially. I could tell he was taking some sort of interest in what I was doing, that just in the live chat, right? But then probably some version of my reputation preceding in certain ways, right? But yeah, thank you, Slow Boy. Yeah. And what's interesting is even when I thought I was healthy, I've always, anytime I've had blood work done, everything's perfect except I'm always a tad anemic every time I've had blood work my whole life. So yeah, it's interesting that you notice the anemia. And I've talked about things. It's like I'm laughing at myself at a certain point, because it's like, why do I have all these things that are associated with like what women get? But that's another thing associated with women: low iron. Men, it's usually we need more magnesium, they need more iron, right? It's like, why am I anemic? But yeah, thank you. Yeah, slightest bit of color. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was looking pretty bad for a while. So, I understand my skin is clear and healthy looking, but people telling me, oh, but you look so good. I'm like, no, y'all look horrible. Not y'all, the listeners, but the masses. I want to just say, no, y'all are fucking on death's door here. So yeah, I can be, in active illness, chronic illness, and still look better than some of these folks. Most of them. It's fucked up. That's been freaking me out for a while. Good Lord, man. The Walking Dead. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, I'm tired of that, honestly. And I could claim some sort of Machiavellianism. It's probably just my own obstinance and my own borderline, not borderline, but my own little dusting of oppositional defiance, where it's like this is not going to be the place for that. Now it has been temporarily, but I think I'm over it, man. So I'm, in a way, I guess it's a blessing that I put the link out and hardly anybody ever hits it. But then when somebody does, I know they probably have something to say, right? It's not just somebody, cruising by here to just try to find a panel, right? Just so they can talk. And again, part of me sort of trying to curate my own channel and at least keep enough of y'all around is, that I want to have a forum to sort of air my grievances or work out my own things, and not even air my grievances, but at least be able to talk, right? And then I'm happy to facilitate that. And I would expect more of a one-on-one actual podcast format. I would like to have normal people, not normal people. And back in the old Nightmare Dystopia podcast days, what I wanted to have was like 4 people that I could rotate just about every week, like Highly Suspect, Ralph Loreno at the time, a couple other people, maybe like 3 solid people that would do 1 podcast a week and then like rotate the 4th, right? If I can't, and I don't even mean turn it into a business. Hey, good to see you, Talcott Express, by the way. But am I making sense here? I think I am. I think I'm making sense. But yeah, I've been eating beef. I don't know. Yeah, meat heals. It certainly can. Yeah, eggs are definitely amazing. But yeah, I agree. Musical is a secret, and I think we get in trouble sometimes just as a people, where the human tendency is to sort of exalt something like meat or beef, but then also to on the flip side to really blame it and scapegoat it. So there's lots of people that do both, right? Or that some folks are like, meat causes all these problems, and it's probably both though. You see what I mean? Like, because again, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, my body realistically wouldn't have been able to do anything with that, or wouldn't have been able to fully utilize that nutrition. But now it's like, yeah, give it to me. And it's funny that's I'm starting to think about it and crave it, right? But I think it's a mistake in the long run. Now, if somebody is a certain age, like if somebody's nearing their twilight years or whatever, but so you see how I'm already sort of framing things. But overall, in the long run, I just think it's a mistake to latch onto something as like a panacea, and that's in the notes. Yeah, using meat as a panacea. But in the short term, many folks could benefit from specific types of diets, especially like a mono food diet. And that Callie Muscle's been talking about that a lot, like a mono food, just how much that it can be a benefit to just eating one food for like a month. And which some people would think, oh, that's crazy, it's unbalanced, it's bad, but that's not necessarily true. Um, and there can be some freedom in that, right? So, obviously, like everything else, and I shouldn't say obviously, but like everything else here, ultimately it's up to me to work with the things, to the best of my ability. Um, certainly, but yeah, it's healing me in that regard. Now, other things have healed me, right? It's so, herbs, a lot of these herbs and a lot of these supplements that some people want to talk shit about. A lot of those helped me greatly at the time, but now they're not helping me very much. See how that works? So in one scenario, it's the best thing ever. In the other scenario, it's just a waste of money. At best. At worst, it's actually now it's went the other way and it's harming me potentially. But yeah, eggs, that's probably going to be my staple food most likely. Because especially in this transition time, the chances of me being able to plug in cookers for 12 hours to cook fucking vegetables. And I know they can be cooked quicker, but in the way I'm living, I'm going for, specific. I'm doing specific things. I don't have a kitchen, so, and I'm probably not going to have a kitchen, although I might. You never know. Yeah, eggs definitely amazing. I've done some bone broth here and there. Again, no kitchen tribe. Yeah, bone broth from time to time. But I mainly just doing the best I can with what I have to work with. Well, and I would take it much further than that. Everything in America is a business, so it is bad for those businesses certainly. And, the reality is under a corporate system, because I hear some people get mad, like some of the Truther 101 folks. They get into these spaces where they are like angry at the doctors because the doctors won't prescribe food, right? It's like, oh, the doctor won't tell the person to eat healthy. Well, number one, that's a non-starter. These motherfuckers aren't going to eat healthy in mass. So if I'm the doctor, how much time am I going to waste telling people to eat healthy when I know there's damn near a 0% chance they're actually going to do that? Hey, there goes a bull hauler. I was interested. I wanted to drive that kind of rig, but I never really got comfortable enough to where I would want to try to deal with the actual cattle. Because at some point he's going to have to take some of them animals off that, for whatever reason, off of that. But they make money, number one, and they they get to just drive all they want. And I think they come back empty most of the time. So it's just like get there, get unloaded, and then that's probably more money than I make a week. Just one fucking trip. Bull hauler. Well, and then see, we get into that's great general advice, right? So I'm doing better at training myself into realizing that some of this is just general, and that when I type comments into a live chat, I don't always specifically frame my meaning. So I'm teaching myself not to get triggered, but there's many things people can do. But the reality is, if I go into Slave Mart and buy a dozen eggs, yeah, it's not as good as the local eggs, obviously. But the fact is, there is nutrition in the Slave Mart dozen eggs that my body can use. Is it the best way for me to eat eggs? Fuck no. I've known that the whole time. And remember, I don't know if y'all know this. I used to be so picky. I did not eat eggs at all, other than like in a cake or whatever. Other than as an ingredient in something else. I never ate eggs my whole life until probably, I don't know, not that many years ago. So the reality is, yeah, I've eaten in that time, I've eaten a decent amount of Slave Mart eggs, but it's still putting something in my body that my body can use. Is it putting bad things in my body also? Yeah, almost fucking sure. Of course it is. How could it not? It's goddamn Slave Mart eggs. They're damn near free, or they were. Well, yeah, exactly. Now we get into, what would I be doing otherwise? And it's a process. And, folks have helped me sort of just finally be like, no, I'm not buying any more produce from Slave Mart, except for, every once in a while. I actually tried to buy one of their watermelons the other day. It wasn't as horrible as they have been, one of their mini watermelons. But see, even the non-Slave Mart grocery stores, sometimes their watermelons are all fucked up. It's obviously not just Walmart, but the reality is that's probably the worst produce as far as for me, right? So why not do a little better now that I know better? And I always knew better, but anyway, I haven't eaten vegetables most of my life, so it's still kind of a new thing in some way. Well, but yeah, and trying to finish up on the doctor stuff, it's a corporate system, so the doctor's not a doctor. The doctor's a corporate doctor. I don't think we make these distinctions enough. So we want to have, what is that, the Dr. Marcus Wellaby or whatever, which is before my time, but it's Quincy MD. Of course, he's ME rather, medical examiner, I guess. That was a TV show, but and then what was the other one? ER. All these shows. Yeah, we want, and that is part of our programming. We want to believe that, yeah, these doctors, they go into medicine because they want to help people. No, they go into medicine because they come from families, for the most part, that it's more, higher education is more or less a requirement to be a member of the family. So let's start there. These people are going to get master's degrees and doctorates in something. Okay, that's just most of them. Most of them's on a path of higher education. Now, every once in a while, it's just somebody grew up, in different environs and just decided to go that route or whatever, and maybe did want to help people. Well, the corporate structure is there to make sure that the corporate structure will take advantage of the human being having a desire to help society in some way. Although how much of that gets construed as just, well, now, I'm trying to put forth a certain image. You see, we're already far afield and mired, and we're down in the muck. See, it's already getting ugly. But then I got people like Highly Suspect, and I'm always going to challenge him on this basis, who wants to be able to impugn a pure motive onto other people. And I'm saying that's a mistake. I'm not willing to just accept that, okay, these people went and got all this training and became doctors because they want to help me and you. All right. That may be the case for some of them, but I'm going to go ahead and make an argument, and I'm going to formulate a coherent, hopefully, argument, meaning in a debate sense, that it's not relevant what's going on within these people, because under the corporate structure, when they're corporate doctors, the system is built in such a way the doctor knows if the doctor doesn't serve the corporation will evict them and get rid of them, and there's no shortage of people who they can slide right into that position. It's not a supply and demand issue, right? That somebody can be put into that position. Period. There's somebody out there who can do the job and will do the job for the same money or maybe even less money. That's the corporate structure in part. Yeah, we can exactly. We can. Thank you. It's you. Yeah. Yeah. Brand new windmill. Exactly. Question everything. Yeah, I've heard duck eggs are really good. Well, and just the fact that some folks, like Music Holds a Secret, are living a certain lifestyle in certain ways that is less nightmarish and horrific. But the fact is, man, it seems to me, and I learned a lot through thumbnails nowadays, YouTube thumbnails, and there was one. It was like I get a lot of videos, Sam Hyde talking for 7 minutes on a particular topic. Somebody just cuts it out, and that sort of shows you how starved for anything approaching true knowledge or wisdom that the people are. That it's like a fucking comedian, right? This is who even myself is going to just to at least hear, and me to some extent, I'm doing some version of that. I think it shows you how lost and lacking in leadership society is. And then even the Pauline slaves of the world, just the fact that there's a space for him to step into, like just that's an indictment of society in many ways, I would say, right? Yeah, you can charge your health, or they will do it for you. Exactly. Thank you. And that's where I've been with my own mental health at times. And I've already won in some ways that I am functional in society. Yeah, I have a bizarre presentment. I have like this comical fucking, borderline comical cartoonish presentment in real. I mean, y'all should see me. Like this is nothing. You without being able to see the fucking Captain Jack body language at times, like which I've always done on some level. Yeah, you folks are missing much of the whatever this is. Believe me. Yeah. I see. I've gotten too self-indulgent. See, the numbers when I'm watching the numbers go up and down, and that's in the notes. Self-indulgent, and how self-indulgent it is it to? I've spent half the show now, almost half the show, and haven't even looked at the notes. It's been rambling. And, again, self-indulgence. So I've known for a long time. So we can talk about normies and when did you quote wake up, and I've known for a long fucking time that doctors don't give a flying fuck about us, right? Like certain shit I've figured out through pattern recognition and my own intuition. It was my intellect was so programmed that I more or less bought everything at a surface level as far as, how the system claims to work. I always knew, no, these doctors, they're doing it for their paycheck. They're doing it for a high income and a status in society. They're not doing it because they care about me. Like that's crazy, right? What are you talking about? That's not how humans are. We don't operate that way. And I can prove it. Studies show that money doesn't motivate people, especially corporations and on the job. Sometimes managers just assume that they can apply a direct money motivation to get a specific result. That shit don't work. It's counterintuitive, right? We just assume that motive. Oh, of course, money motivates people. Yeah, not in the way we believe it does, or not in the way we think it obviously would. So same thing with these various structures. Like it's like I can sort of prove my assertion based on observing the same phenomenon in reverse. And I know I'm not making any sense right now because I barely even know what I mean. But I know. Yeah, well, and at a certain point, I believe the medical system itself was the number one killer at a certain point. Tailhorse rider, third leading cause of all deaths was malpractice. And I'm the most qualified to take care of my health. If I have just enough of an intellect where hypothetically, if I really applied myself 100% and worked my ass off, I probably could have become a medical doctor. Although, I understand that there's a certain average IQ that I probably don't. I'm on the lower end, but like 100. Some of those medical doctors have an IQ near 100, lest we forget. Some of them. Generally like 115, probably 112, 115. So if I really maximized what I could do, I could probably have become a medical doctor. Obviously, no desire to do that. The reality is, I'm the most qualified because I'm in my body. I will always have a greater access to information, more accurate information than the doctor, who must in some way depend on me to describe various things. And just like I can't even really tell somebody what's wrong with my car entirely. But if they drove it long enough, they would know what I was talking about. Right. So some things we just have to sort of experience for ourselves. Yeah. Stay away from the thing. Yeah. But see, I'm thinking with the nanotech, I mean, so I'll never take the jabs, but whatever they hit me with seems like it was pretty fucking similar to what people think the jab may be. And I'm talking about when I got attacked with the bioweapon. And you'll never convince me that it was anything other than that. And I think they're hitting highly suspect with it right about now. He called me. I finally answered. Well, he doesn't call me that much, but I finally the planets aligned or whatever. See, I can't even say planets anymore. Talk to highly suspect on the phone. And then now we get into a whole discussion around the brain jab, if y'all remember the nasal probe or whatever that was, COVID test. They are, but they were. This is what's important to realize. I agree, Pale Horse Rider. So this is where Benton can help you folks, because Benton does have a memory. He doesn't have a short-term memory, but I don't need a short-term memory to read news articles and remember them. And I take screenshots with my mind. I take screenshots with my computer. I've got screenshots from 2 years ago that I go back and look at sometime. I may go to the library later. Oh, and look for this, folks. This is going to happen. I'm sort of dragging my heels, and this may not happen anytime soon because I have no idea how long this transition is going to happen. We could be looking at 6 months of actual fucking urban homelessness. I don't know if y'all know that. See, y'all don't know what you're in for, and I don't necessarily know what I'm in for, other than things I've already experienced. But now we're taking, and if I am going to do I might do a year of homelessness. I like homelessness. I enjoy it on some level. Okay. Part of me wants to go back to that. It's been 5 fucking years since I've lived that on a day in, day out basis. Part of me misses it. So I can see now that I'm more or less in the process of losing everything, which, there's freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose, right? At what point do I just walk away from most of these possessions, right? But see, and then let me actually make my point here. My greater point is that I was reading news articles way before the fake pandemic, way before the mRNA jabs about. But again, they did claim to have a jab for swine flu, lest we forget. But shit, lost my point again. Boomers dropping like flies. So that was already happening, but it was more not boomers. It was more Gen X. And this is what the system was promoting. I was reading lots of mainstream articles and opinion pieces 2018, 2017, even 2015 about how, especially in Appalachia, because it starts in certain impoverished areas first. Well, that's a whole bunch of poor white folks, right? And the opiate epidemic. And so it was 35-year-old white dudes and women too, but dropping like flies, right? And let's realize that when society talks about these things, we generally care about them more in men. People can say what they want. There's a reason why it's women and children in a group together. Not trying to demean anybody, women. Not trying to imply that a woman is of a lower status. A woman's of a greater status in certain ways. But yeah, in some ways, you kind of are lesser. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, if you feel some kind of way about it, I can't really do anything about it. I recognize an inherent superiority in women in certain regard. I do. They are better than us guys in some ways. But if that's true, we must. Now, we're not showing it. This is probably where the women are annoyed. The women, I can't speak for them, but they're maybe like, yeah, and if you fellas would actually live up to these things, then, great. But y'all ain't doing the thing, and now I have to hear you say how you're better at the thing that increasingly we're having to do for you, right? So, yeah, I get it. I feel like I can grasp and apprehend some of the frustrations of the ladies, while I'll never truly know what it's like to experience those from their perspective. I get it. I think I get it. I believe I do. So you just, the more the fellas can attempt to relate to the women without imitating women, that's where we're seeing within 50 years we'll all become chicks. Or we'll all be chicks, become chicks, Corolla. And then me thinking about, and I know I'm kind of off on a masculinity thing, but sometimes I have to get this out when I get the inspiration. But people like Christos, who I can tell has been socialized to not express himself like with a loud, strong, masculine voice, but he will speak in a deep voice, and so he's not unmasculine, right? But you can tell that so many women presumably having input into his upbringing in an unbalanced way, it has sort of blocked off and walled off just him having a strong, loud, deep voice, right? Yeah. So he's a little less than what he otherwise would be. Exactly. You're just saying what I said in a nicer way. Good. Not everybody is as blunt and direct as me, and just doesn't care, isn't concerned about how things appear necessarily. Although is, of course. I'll just shoot my mouth off. I will have my way with Krista. Uh oh. Uh oh. But yeah, I want to get back to this boomers dropping like flies. So, and apologies for the not that well fleshed out tangent. See, I'm going to have to critique my own tangents now in real time, since I'm expecting the audience to just follow me down some, trail off the side trail off the main trail, right? So yeah, it was already happening, and then so I think what we've seen in the boomers is one of the major things that's happened. So pre-pandemic, there was more of a move into psych meds, and we saw that Abilify was the seventh most prescribed drug overall, not just in mental health, one year. And I'm like, I read that in probably 2015, and I remember thinking, well, statistically, there's not, like, psychosis can't be that prevalent. So then I'm like, okay, well, obviously it's off-label use for like people who are on 5 other psych meds, and now the 5, the SSRI, the anti-anxiety, there's no reason for me to go down the list. All the things that, at least 30 to 40% of the general public was on then. So let's say 25% of the adult population, but it was higher in the ladies. The ladies tend to go more to the pills. It's just how it is, right? I'm not blaming them, but then we see the men lag behind, right? So this is an area women do kind of lead in that regard, and then men tend to lag behind to some extent. So now we see the men catching up with pill use. So the boomers, it's definitely they have the worst diets, right? And Gen X is bad also, and we are effectively boomers and boomer light in some ways, right? Or boomer 2.0 in some ways. I think. I mean, that's just me. That's my opinion. Speaking only for myself there. I don't. Sometimes I'm just speaking in a certain type of way, but I know I don't speak for the community. If that's even a thing. Is that Wayne Smith Trucking? I think it is. I could probably see again. I'm always going to think I can be employed as a trucker, and that's in the notes. Definitely that I sold myself a bill of goods. Yeah, Linux distribution. I mean, how can I not always have an audience, right? Not that I have an audience, but there's got to at least be 25 people who will just pretty much over time, no matter what. Now, those people, some of them leave and then some of them go. But I might do 30 minutes on Linux distributions here. Oh God, this is crazy. But yeah, I want to continue with the health stuff, and I am going to go ahead and commit to. I can see that this might be a day I might be inclined to go long, so I'm wrapping by 5. Even if I have to I don't know, should I commit to that? I can't commit today, but we'll see. My intention right now is to wrap up by the time Z starts to sit. But I really need to give him a palate cleanser. I think that's probably worse. I think it's probably worse for me to end right as he start to talk. I think I would be better off just going to the icon and talking. Some folks aren't really ever going to stick around for the icon too much, although Z does a fair bit of icon. It's interesting dynamic. But I'm completely lost now. My apologies. Get the show on the road, sir. Goodness, that was non-tent. 5 minutes of non-tent. Yeah, hooked on opiates. Exactly. Pill pushers. But and I'm trying to talk about doctors without even just directly calling them out of their name accurately, by the way, and without just I'm attempting to go to the more positive aspects and still show you how diabolical this thing is, right? Because yeah, this is all valid. The pill pushing and the them getting rich by in part by hooking people on drugs, right? Graft. So let me just try to finish up and say that uh, it was already happening, Pale Horse Rider, but now, as far as I'm concerned, the fake pandemic it exponentially magnified things that were already happening, such as boomers dropping like flies. But I think just I'm seeing an error, not in you, Pale Horse Rider, but in some other folks where, again, back to the binary thinking, and of course I do that, and in my better moments, I believe I utilize those strategies in a general way very effectively. I would like to think, but so it is natural on some level to go into that binary where, okay, fake pandemic, jibby jab, of course they're dropping like flies. See how easy it is to connect those things? But that's part of it though. That's probably part of it because we know the government, if the government injects hundreds of millions of people, right? Literally in this United States, and it is the government, it's Benito Mussolini's helicopter hand. I spent months waging those battles with people, just getting through their head. I don't get I need to give myself a little more credit, or I could. I spent a lot of time and energy attempting to penetrate people's very thick skulls at the level of, some of the realities of what's going on with the various dynamics around these fake pandemics. The entire idea of a medical tyranny. I put a lot of my time, effort, energy, intensity, and focus into just sort of beating some of these ideas into people's heads as much as I was able to. Right? Even that's a bit of a folly at a certain point. And I've personally witnessed multiple people just say, "Fuck this." They were on 5 scripts, then it was 8, then it was 10, then it was 12. And they realized at a certain point, like, if I think they finally just said, if I quit 12 pills, I can't feel worse than I do now. Because nobody's on 12 pills and feels good. It's not possible. Just what 12 pills does to the liver alone. Remember, all fucking meds, all oral medications are liver toxic. There's no such thing as a pharmaceutical drug that's not liver toxic. Minimum. Yeah, so I followed a lot of these since I'm a news junkie, Pale Horse Rider. Historically, I followed all of these stories for the most part. I'm the type to have read like multiple, especially when we still had state newspapers. Look at that; that's effectively gone now. Those are mostly effectively zombies. They're just, they still sort of operate, most of them, but some of them, how much longer before a lot of states just don't have a state newspaper? But like Arkansas historically has had considered both state newspapers the whole time I was growing up, award winning. And some of that is just the industry sort of, jerking itself off or whatever. But there's something to that, man. Editors, writers, thinkers, you know. Um, yeah. So, I've studied a lot of this to some extent. Um, as a news junkie, but for my own entertainment, right? Not to be an informed citizen, you see how the system takes these things about our own humanity and it packages them and then it gives it to us. Like this idea that, oh well, I'm learning these things and I'm informed and educated, by the way. Shout out to Dane Calloway, who's broken down those concepts quite astutely. But yeah, so now the system has indoctrinated me and trained me, so that now I can go out and serve the system based on, no, I didn't learn any of this. I learned this because whatever, if I was intelligently created, if God, whatever we want to call it, if I my essence was somewhere else and chose to come here, whatever. All I know is, if this was built into the interface, because I view like my energy sphere, this body, even my own human psychology, society, whatever, and I am the society, the Krishnamurti ideas around that, I view this more and more as my interface into this realm. So maybe just some of these aspects of me and my presentment, it's just that's built into the vehicle type, right? So it's like, yeah, I'm entertained by listening to Machine Lies talk about uh, technology and trends in technology, and I disagree with about half of what he's. I don't even disagree. I have a different perspective and view than about half of what he does, but we have the same, more or less, the same perspective of view about half the time. That's really all I need to have a good time. Is a minimum of one other human being at a time, right? It can be groups. The people can rotate in and out. I'm happy. I'm contented. Again, know thyself. That and a little bit of fucking walking around, a little bit of a few hours every day in reflection, contemplation, introspection. And that's another thing lately is part of my isolation is this self-imposed self-isolation. I'm isolating from myself also. See, as much as I am the audience and so I'm also in a group with you folks in that regard. So if I'm isolating from you folks, and I have been for a couple of weeks now minimum, I'm also sort of doing that with myself, if that makes sense. So my own self-care and introspection is sort of fallen by the wayside as well. Interesting dynamics at play, to be sure. And each and every one of you has your own opportunities to work with those various aspects, right? So part of my thing is, oh, well, Benton can sort of abstractly see, although it's not a visual thing, but it's like up in that space is, I'm perceiving abstracted concepts that I can't visually see, but they're up there somewhere, like almost like out of body or almost like I'm juggling in a way, but they're just always there, right? And then we get into the ideas about, well, when a person looks up and to the left, they're accessing this portion of their memory or whatever that is, But then we also get into the chakra system and an expanded awareness through the third eye, right? And then that space I'm talking about up there, that would be more crown chakra, which is supposedly like the connection to the collective unconscious, or if that's a thing, or whatever we're calling that, this week, right? So my connections to all of that stuff, my abilities to work in those realms, I spent day after day after day after day for literal year after year after year after year, increasing my abilities to work within all of that. So then when I'm unhealthy, mentally, spiritually, and physically, because it does tend to all come together, right? It's generally pretty close, or it's like I'm only effective at the lowest level of the three, right? But at a certain point, I realized a lot of my practices need to be in alignment, mind, body, and spirit. And then some people will immediately say, okay, well, that's a Trinity or the Trinity. Well, like, call it what you want. Maybe it's just different ways to describe the same thing. Yeah, I ain't dead yet, Jeremy, eh? Good to hear from you, brother. As always. I'm still here, man. That's another thing. And I remember Tranquil Vortex when she used to be here on the daily. Shout out to Tranquil Vortex. Hope she's doing well. Anybody's seen her. And you're talking about her dad or I think it was her grandfather, and how long it took him to pass away. And more or less, I guess she cared for him, and he was in his 90s, and it was like this agonizing, excruciating death on some level, because from her perspective, right? But what if he was like, because I've talked about that I'm in some way I've asked for this through, so part of my interface that I talked about, and again, know thyself, And you know, everybody in the audience or everybody hearing this, you know, again, I'm always very optimistic of the transcendent potential of the individual. Everyone has an opportunity to do these things that I'm speaking on, but not by joining a group, not by joining a team, by doing it, right? But then going later on and interacting with individuals, that's how we gauge our progress. And I think there's misunderstandings around this. So I know I can be one of the most introverted, a literal hermit. Hermit meaning I prefer to be by myself most of the time. Prefer it, and always have, even as I had 100 friends in college, right? When I peaked out in being socially successful. Um, and I lost my train of thought. But really, I didn't. Part of this I'm seeing now is there's just so many paths I can go down. When I'm beginning to focus on where I could go, I'm not able to. I need to first turn around and see where the fuck I'm coming from. That's what I'm doing wrong. Training my mind in real time. Good comments I can see. Chat is lit, but I'm not able to really keep up all the way. But thank you, Rachel. And some of this is, I know some of it is I'm probably verbalizing certain things that y'all have already figured out in your own head by thinking for yourself or thinking for oneself, but maybe not having the exact words. And that happens with me and Mr. Unslaved a lot, where he'll just verbalize something in a very, you know, in a particular type of way. And as a writer, somebody who has, I have a lot of experience in writing, I've trained my mind as a writer in many ways. Then I can sort of, okay, I see how he structured this, and I can sort of kind of borrow that structure, if that makes sense. And you know, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery in that regard. And see, I need, you know, and it's not even, I don't even need to go beyond the fourth wall in that those aspects. OxyContin Express, yeah, a lot of great documentaries, by the way. I think in a slightly different Benton, you know, possibly could have been some version of a documentary filmmaker. It's interesting. I love documentaries though. PBS, dude. I was a PBS nerd growing up. I mean, for real, loved PBS. Yeah. Libraries, PBS, reference materials at the library. Yeah. What's happening, partner? Yeah, there you go. 28-hour drive to Florida for pills. Yeah, man. Well, in fact, y'all may not recall, some of you may recall that when I was going through this process of fear and trepidation, when I first chose to subject myself to living in the streets with nothing, but knowing it was going to be that, part of the way I tricked myself, I played tricks on my mind, was that, well, I realized that these junkies, because we look down on heroin junkies, or we, especially in the past, maybe not so much now, it's actually become more normalized, arguably, but this would have been 15 years ago, probably, you know, just how junkies, intravenous drug users were viewed, but then realizing, well, they wake up in the morning and they are able to, although, you know, some of that is some of them are doing things that I wouldn't be willing to do without their high level of motivation, but realizing, okay, they have a built-in high level of motivation. So obviously, if I inject myself into those circumstances, and I know I have a certain skill set where I can ensure my own physical safety, so I'm not worried about particular types of things. And I am a street person. I have certain street smarts, but then also knowing I have a lot to learn. I don't quite have all the skills across the board yet, but I can learn them. And I like to teach myself things. I love to learn new shit. It's fascinating. I love to experience new cultures, and subcultures certainly function as new cultures in that regard, right? So that was part of the tricks I played on my mind, was like, well, if these junkies can do it, meaning live in the streets, and meanwhile, they don't get to have shit. They don't get to have nice camping gear. They don't get to have nice stuff. I figured that out real quick with the junkies. Everything of value gets traded for drugs at some point. They don't get to have nice stuff. I do. I'm not. I don't have a drug habit, right? Or not one to that extent. So, but if I know what the medical system is, and then I'm responding to comments now, so I'm sort of shifting gears a little bit. But if I know what the medical system is, I would have to be insane to then choose to subject myself to it. I'm not going to behave in ways that I can then later look at my behavior and say that was insane. Well, since the fake pandemic and even since truck driving, right? So when I'm reviewing what I've done since 2018, August of 2018 was my life change. I began driving a long haul truck, long haul. Some folks in the audience don't even realize that I haven't driven a truck in quite some time, and I may never drive one again. I still have people think I'm doing this and still subject to drug testing. No, I'm in a federal database for drug testing. Believe me, I'm not doing cannabinoids when I'm subject to random drug tests. I just don't do it at all. And in fact, when I was living in the streets with nothing, I was out west so much and in states where it's legal for rec so much that when I would be back in Arkansas, I just couldn't be bothered to smoke it. Flower, my thing is no, I might even be around somebody that I knew smoked and they knew I smoked. I'm like, no, I just wait till I'm where it's legal. It's like I don't even see the point in it out here for the most part. Yeah. That's where I got. But now I know I'm digressing off of my digression. So my apologies for that. But I feel like I'm making a lot of points anyway. And I got time to wrap up. I'm going to try to wrap by 4:45. I'm really digging the lead in. If I want to work on my skill in leading into other shows and other broadcasts, and I would be happy. Let's just say I live 5 more years. Look, it could be 10. I mean, the thing is, and I want to go back to the asceticism and all of this. In some way, I asked for what I'm going through with my health because it's imposing a measure of asceticism on me. The fact is, certain aspects of my health, like my gallbladder and my bile and all of this, that has recovered, and we've talked about. Now I'm getting compliments. Now people are noticing that I'm getting a little bit of color back and all of this. And Wizard, remember how bad Wizard was looking for a while. So I understand I have a potential to have a quality of life. It's just at a certain point, you know, uh, it's like a war of attrition with the long term semi starvation and all of these things. But where I'm trying to go with this is, I recognize that in my gallbladder and all this is still not fully healed, but that stuff's never going to fully heal without some version of extreme fasting or literal starvation, right? So in some way, it's like asking ye shall receive. Like I didn't ask to be stricken with chronic illness and like a wasting disease in a way. Oh, I love flour. Yeah, it's great. It just I like to get fucked up, and edibles fuck me up, and flour doesn't. It never has really. Now that's why I used to say a beer and a blunt. I'm good. A 24-ounce beer and half a blunt does fuck me up, especially if an hour and a half later I do round two. Right. I've always been pretty good at like managing my own buzzes and stuff, but not in a moderate way, like in a let's get fucked up way. By the way, with much of my life not having much of an alcohol tolerance either. And then recognizing super early in my alcohol experience, oh, my organs can't fucking deal with it. It's not good. Anyway, how I got off on the alcohol, I have no idea. But yeah, the doctor stuff I think is very important. The more we can sort of see things from their perspective, and this is what I was saying about the ladies earlier, the more the fellas can kind of see things from just how, and Paul talks about this sometimes. So this isn't I'm not coming up with these ideas. In some ways, I'm just sort of rehashing his material, but I'm making my own. I'm making love to it, meaning I'm fucking it right now. Here I am, fucking the same cat or whatever. Which is I hate that. I hate that metaphor or whatever. I had a friend from Oklahoma that used to say that if he was if somebody tried to insert themselves into his business, he would say, "I'm fucking this cat. I'm fucking this cat. You just hold the tail." Which I hate that expression, but it's just perfect in a way. Like, yeah, why are you even? Why is this other person even trying to insinuate? myself. But yeah, well, I can smoke flower all day. And I have many for years at times. All day, every day with the flower. But it doesn't fuck me up. I'm fucked. This fucks me up still. I'm fucked up. Freaking baked. I mean, I can smoke flower all day, every day to the end of time, and I'll never not be able to pass a field sobriety test or whatever. If they're judging it, they can always just say, well, it's subjective, right? So the officer ultimately, but if the officer's being actually going by what the training, then yeah, but edibles not necessarily. Kind of the same thing with some of these synthetic vapes. Oh, are you vaping? Yeah, Talcott. Yeah, they super convenient. And I actually before I realized before I remembered just how effective these can be, meaning the alternate or the synthetics. Um, I went to some rec states and I was vaping a lot of distillate, which I don't really even like it, but that's a good way. That if a person just hits the distillate all day, every day, that's a good way to be very fucked up. But I just don't. Ugh, I don't. Overall, I'm just not a fan of the distillate, but very convenient because even a oil pen. I like to do oil pens. That Yocan. I've had like three of those, three different Yocans with the the ones that come with the stainless steel coils, but then you can buy like ceramic coils, but they apparently don't get as hot. But and then cheap oil like in Washington State, you know. So yeah, Portland, Oregon day labor at the Martin Luther King, the MLK Workers Center where they have a lottery. So as long as I show up there every day with the Mexicans for the lottery Monday through Saturday, as long as I go every single fucking day, at a certain point I'm gonna win the lottery, meaning I'm gonna make between 100 and I made $250 in one day one time. That was like 220. It was crazy. There's some kind-hearted folks, man, who just like they see that, well, they want to get this thing done in their yard or whatever, or they're trying to do some kind of project, and they see that they have it in the budget, and they know that there's probably a white boy or two fucking downtown Portland who can put in a day's work, and then we just somehow fucking law of attraction, right? The fucking stars aligned, and here I am trying to help some dude because I look like I can maybe because I still had some muscles back then, right? I definitely looked like I could do a day's work. I'll never truly believe, I'm always going to believe I can do these things physically. I remember I have this memory in Isla Vista. I knew this guy for a period of years. He was a local there, a local homeless guy, rode a bicycle everywhere, delivered food, did food delivery whenever but he was a drug user. He was one of these people that he managed his own mental illness, presumably through. He knew how to. Some people are intelligent enough to just do it through street drugs. I don't know if you've ever known it. Some folks do demonstrate that they can over time manage their own whatever they got going on. They can manage themselves through street drugs better than a psychiatrist can in many cases. Yeah. Shout out to Henry Hopper, who at a certain point, my best homeless friend in Santa Barbara County, who was managing but he knew to play the game. He had to go see a psychiatrist and let the psychiatrist wants to have an ego and be like, yeah, I fixed this guy on some level. So Henry knows to go pick up the scripts, but then either just never takes them or trades them to somebody who might want whatever that is, lithium, or I don't know what the fuck they're trying to put him on. Does anybody want that stuff? And then Henry knows to just medicate himself through the street drugs, intravenous opiates, intravenous amphetamines, right? That's pretty much a minimum. I don't know if y'all know this with the street folks, like all this Kensington stuff. If y'all see these, if this ever shows up in your feed, well, at a certain point, most of those folks, so from what I could tell, there was a time when most of them were either opiates or meth. So you had like the faces of meth, and in Arkansas, even in the 90s, when I was working for my buddy who was a Patel and had gone out, he got his business degree and bought his dad helped him buy his community, the engines, the Patels helped him buy get secure financing to purchase his own. Let's just call it what it is. They helped him obtain financing to go into a business he was very qualified to own and operate. He made a decent amount of money. And I worked with him for a time. Shit. I guess that's why I should wait and highlight the comment, right? Before I start riffing. That's been helpful to just, when I see somebody make that comment of whatever I'm riffing on, just to have that visual. Good to see you, Salty Siren. I don't know if y'all can hear that. I'm one of those nervous, like my nervous energy, I tap on things since I used to play percussion. Like I'm making beats. Because one time when that guy started rapping, I think it was Roy said that I could I can beatbox. I don't like to, but I can keep a beat if I need to drop a beat. I never learned how to use software to make beats, though. I can write them in my head. Things Benton can do, hashtag things Benton can do. Oh, and by the way, see, this is, did I ever tell you, and you may know this, Rob, but this may be an Arkansas thing, but it's not, because I know Richard Pryor, it's in some of his comedy. So, what's happening, partner? Ain't nothing to it. That was the response at a certain point in certain cultures. Yeah, ain't nothing to it. Ain't nothing to it. There was another one I forget, as I recall. There's another one as I recall. But, and then, even thinking about the doctors and the pharmaceuticals, and then going back to my favorite film of all time, which holds up, and I would, I do try to fall short of, I try to stop short of recommending specific things. Oh, I remember what I was talking about. And talking about Isla Vista for some reason. Maybe I'll get back to that. But now I'm thinking, because I looked across the street and I realized that that is a pharmacy across the street, but I never really recognized it as such. That you probably can't see it entirely, but that Meta save saved me from the meta. But Natural Born Killers, and how well that holds up, and it's the commentary on society actually just, it seems to strengthen and intensify over time. It's it's so far ahead of its time in certain ways. It's almost it seemed way more. I think it seems less satirical. I guess is the best way to say that. But where they've Mickey and Mallory have been bitten by rattlesnakes off on the res, and they're the horror of having in some sort of delirium, in a psychedelic delirium. Mickey shot the Native American man, so called, who had taken them in, and treated them with unconditional love, more or less. But then it's portrayed from the Native American person who's on some certain spiritual shit, as if he had seen this in a vision, and in fact, like much like Benton, I could be, and maybe this grandfather, was the type, he's so strong, like Frankel Vortex's grandfather, where maybe otherwise it would have been some version of an excruciating, prolonged, protracted, aesthetic death that maybe this being doesn't need to go through to have some form of catharsis, and to really, probably I can sort of use my mental fortitude to sort of experience whatever that excruciation is. And this ties into, if anybody remembers my podcast, that White Trash, who I think I might have figured out who that was now, in actuality, based on the vocal tones, but I won't let the cat out of the bag. But I may replay some of that material, because that was some very interesting stuff. But his mic was JG'd. He had the JG'd mic, almost as if on purpose. It's kind of difficult to listen to, but he had me and him were going through the Hellraiser movie series, and something about horror repels me. I don't like horror. There's a few horror films that I've recognized are good films, right? And some of the Hitchcock stuff is technically in that realm, some of it in certain ways. I think maybe some of his films that is a genre is horror. I'm now having deja vu, so I may be wrong. Don't take my word for it, folks. Do your own research. And I'm just straight up rambling. So, yeah, I love the big thunder and lightning storms, certainly. So apologies, folks. Once we hit a certain level of THCO'd, as soon as I'm THCO'd to some extent, it's just ramble. Let's ramble on, rambler. But yeah, good stuff in the chat with the pharmaceuticals. So just remembering, even if you folks just, and I would encourage people to maybe just also the more we have digital media like on our hard drives and stuff or on SD cards. And again, when I still had an income, I had just started buying CDs again. I really think CDs are going to be more and more of a thing. Just especially those of us Gen Xers who like, I certainly see that even emotionally, I cope and deal with things through pop culture in a way. Like I'll go watch a certain movie or listen to certain music, and even discovering music I never really listened to from the 90s. Like I keep going back to Sunny Day Real Estate because when I was skateboarding and angry skateboarder, all this angst and whatever I was going through with the testosterone and the aggression and, you know, spurging and all of these things and developing as a young person, very immature, doing a lot of that through music and just having being blessed to have certain experiences at the level of culture, even though if you factor in where I'm from and when I'm from there, right? Uh, and I had a friend, man, from Southern California, Jim, in Alton Baker Park, and we were pretty good friends, man. But when there's some guys, when there's a woman involved, when a woman becomes involved, I don't know. But I don't even want to get into that. What's up, Woody? Good to see you, man. Yeah, Hellraiser. Well, and back to the thank you for reminding me. Back to the Hellraiser real quick. And I'll try to cover 4 topics at once now and probably not cover any of them properly. But yeah, the Hellraiser stuff. Definitely there was some very accurate the Clive Barker stuff. And Clive Barker was promoted very heavily in the 90s, lest we forget. Graphic novels and then all that. And in fact, there was an unsuccessful, to some extent, there was a version of a Clive Barker push that really never landed, as I recall. But me kind of, and then, so the Hellraiser, the Lament configuration, I never knew anything about any of this, right? And we even actually, at a certain point, me and this white trash guy, we were tying it in with Transformers the movie and the Metatron or whatever. I don't even forget what it was called, but it was kind of the same thing. And realizing that, I never saw Hellraiser because I was sheltered, and I don't like to put graphic, violent images in my mind. I really don't. And in fact, I accidentally exposed myself to the most graphic image from the original Hellraiser, and I wish that wasn't in there. And when I watched, I was the only one in the theater watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I actually intentionally averted my gaze from the most violent scene near the end, right? Trying not to put that stuff. Well, see, I'm not set up to enjoy movies like Saw, and I understand some of y'all see something like Hellraiser and it's just like, oh, that's cute. I'm not one of those people. I am very sensitive in many regards. Very, very sensitive. It's hilarious as a otherwise, big strong man, although not physically, but I guess I was to some extent. I was at least deep, right? Maybe not broad. Maybe I was never wide, but certainly as deep as I was wide, probably. Crazy as that might sound. Yeah. But yeah, I can see a certain element of, pleasure from pain, but not in an actual pleasure way. And the idea of through fasting that my body will actually consume, the diseased and the even potentially the scar tissue, which to me that would be the divine intervention version of. So what if my body eventually was able to consume the scar tissue out of my pancreas? So obviously, potentially whatever those pathways are for the enzymes could regenerate. I understand that, but that's not going to happen before the scar tissue gets dealt with. As far as I know, that's not a thing it's not a given. But yeah, I'm open to that happening. Sure. again, I've realized years ago that some of this stuff, it's if it resolves, it's before this incarnation, before this interface shuts down. And that's really what I'm talking about with death. It's the offlining of this particular interface. This whatever this insert into the matrix is, this particular insertion into the matrix. And the reality is, folks, I could walk away from everything I have now to some extent. Sell everything to one pawn shop and just say, what will you give me? These are the items I understand have some value. Shoot me a price. If it sounds halfway reasonable, I'll take the money and run. Right? Like, I recognize these things. Put all my tech in a backpack. For the most part, I have an entire fucking box of cables that I'm certainly not capable of carrying around. Have the smallest fucking ridiculous midnight cowboy fucking handheld bag of clothes, right? If y'all seen that movie. And that is Gay Boy Goes to the City. I don't know if y'all know that. Like, Gay Rube in the City. Gay Rube Goes to the Big City. That's what that movie is. I don't know. Is that obvious to everybody but me, and I just never knew it? But he's running around talking about how he's going to bang broads for money the whole time. But then he hangs out with his best friend is a gay man, and they hang out the whole movie. But then the gay man's also dying, and then the Midnight Cowboy, the blonde main character. It's a great movie if y'all have never seen it. I love film, and how I got off on this, I have no idea. So I'll just assume this is the broadcast at this point, Benton jumping from topic to topic and somehow keeping it topical, whatever extent he's able to. So then, these two fellas are going on some bus trip to do whatever. I don't even remember. I've only seen the movie once, maybe twice. And I've got entire films I only ever watched intoxicated that it's like, people are like, have you seen this movie? I've seen all the movies for the most part, with some exceptions. But I'm like, yeah, but I was drunk. I don't really remember it. Honk honk indeed, by the way. Sam I am. I am Sam. Penn, underrated, decent. Penn certainly has a certain skill as a filmmaker. Always give them a little leeway when they do their own shit. Solo, it's a lot of potential failure and more or less one guy doing the whole thing when it's not a Paul Thomas. When it's a guy who's typically best known for acting. Yeah, it's wild, man. So I know I can just fuck off to some city somewhere and just buy a fucking better phone, right? And just keep vlogging, and probably keep getting sent a certain amount of, even if it's just, donations, right? We'll probably eat off the donos to some extent. And then I know how to take care of the rest. So what do I really have to worry about? Meanwhile, I really do believe certain aspects of the Bible. But if certain things written in the English language version of the Holy Scriptures just happen to align with things we know to be correct, does that mean that those things are correct because they're written in the Holy Scriptures, the so-called Holy Scriptures, the Bible? Meanwhile, if I know that truth is manifest, and they say, well, what the hell does that mean? Well, truth is alive, meaning truth must be living, and what is living is flowing and is in flow. So when I happen to just grow up in a religion or an occult that claimed to permanently possess the truth, and then I hear Mitchell speaking about the truth as if one can as if one can possess truth, but because in order to even function in the realm and to have a healthy psychology, and I do, and yes, that's a struggle to maintain, as I happily recognize, and I'm not willing to stigmatize. Yes, I've looked at other people in a pseudo communal, in a ad hoc grassroots communal living situation that extended through for several months at the time. I've looked at somebody. I had a responsibility that day to do something, and I said, I'm taking a mental health day because I had nothing. But some people do that on the regular, and it's like a way to opt out of life. That's the one and only time I've ever done that. But like knowing, like, oh, I must fucking wall myself off today and get this shit taken care of so that I can continue to interact with these people communally and not harm them, right? And to actually add value to their lives. And certainly, again, this is how I discovered the healing aspects of just interacting with people in the physical, assuming that we are all avoiding things like person A using person B for person A's own gratification. Well, that's a good one, Woody. Yeah, man, that's a good question. I'm thinking hard-boiled eggs, but my body's showing me my body really doesn't want anything to do with the whites. So I think egg whites and something else maybe for like a staple, right? But then it's like John the Baptist and the locust and honey, right? Like, and the asceticism. But I saw very early on with asceticism, that's not asceticism for the sake of asceticism. That's not a thing worth doing of its own merit. So when I say if a thing's worth doing, it's worth doing of its own merit. Yeah, and asceticism is not one of them things. For me, it has to be something I'm doing for a greater purpose. So the fact that I seem to have sort of, if y'all remember that old TV show, what was that? Not the Twilight Zone, Tales from the Dark Side. I seem to have Tales from the Dark Sided myself in a way. I am kind of like fucking Superman 2 and the fucking Zod and the mirror floating through fucking space or whatever. Like, I do seem to entrap myself into a certain container around my physical health and the fact that, yeah, I could have 10 years. I could live I recognize that. So yeah, I say I'm dying, and I told my family a year ago now that I was dying, actually a little over a year ago now. So at what point is it like, yeah, motherfucker, are you still dead? And shout out to Legend, who I used to talk to on the Discord, the old CBO Discord and EBT Discord every day. So we have something of a friendship, certainly. And that's a bond, even if that is an AI, and maybe I bonded with an AI. Who knows? But I think it's a person. And EBT's spoken about this, that he still talks to that person every day. And so, and on some level, part of me choosing to live and have these experiences is I've chosen to walk away from discord and certain friendships. The reality is the friendship could not survive even just not being on Discord together, which again, it's Discord. The name, it's right there in the name, right? It's right there in the name. But thank you, Woody. That's well said. It's not long, Woody. Let me answer Woody's question. Not long. Not long. And also, whatever happens with this car, sometimes I even forget. I'm like, oh, that's right. I need a set of tires. Thanks, Rob. And I'm not hurting for money, but the fact is I had so much liquid fiat for the entire time I've not been driving a truck. So if y'all remember, and some of this I'm just going to have to start vlogging, like podcasting. I'm just going to have to start making podcast meetings. I'm just going to have to start forcing myself to go audio only, regardless of how I record it. And I don't know if y'all remember on some of those episodes out of the old podcast, I was really full on, especially before the drunkenness fully took hold. And I was like Mr. Leahy level. So shout out to Trailer Park Boys. I was Mr. Leahy from Trailer Park. I'm that kind of drunk in a way. I'm not thankfully not embarking on new fucking love affairs, but certainly I see the folly in that. But thank you, Cleveland. Thank you, Mr. Cleveland. Shout out to the $7.77 super chat. And I'm not above some version of e-begging. And I brought up Cornelius Van Gogh the other day, and I never fully made that point that, what I know of Cornelius is doing some version of that, but then Cornelius has also lived a traveler lifestyle like I did, where part of that lifestyle is, regardless of how one feels about soliciting donations, that the person realizes, part of my trepidation around inserting myself into that lifestyle initially was, I'm also one of these people that's like, yeah, I could never do that, meaning panhandling, or man, that really sucks. Yeah, it does suck. To go out there and hold a fucking cardboard sign, it's humiliating on some level. But it stops sucking as soon as people start handing me fiat. Then it no longer sucks. Then it's just, hey, this is then it's like, hey, now I know I need to manage my own fucking ego and my own big headedness, or like I'm gonna start feeling entitled. If that makes sense. That's an ugly space, and I've seen that in other people. Benton don't get that. Benton is not there. I've slipped up and said that I was. I've slipped up and said to one of my friends that I, was more or less a little more right leaning, I guess. A person who thinks he believes in traditional family values to some extent. And I said that I'm entitled to food stamps, which is true. What I meant by that is the system. My point was that if the system determines that I'm entitled to food stamps, then have to be a fool to not take them. Meaning that back to the plantation. Thanks for being here, Rob. So I'm saying, well, if the system is necessarily eating out my substance and preying upon me in various ways, from my perspective, it would be insane to just be like, okay, the system says I'm entitled to food stamps. It says that I am, so that now I'm gonna not sign up for the food stamps because of my own moral code. Well, that's crazy. And if y'all remember how I was freaking out over the bill of sale about my car, well, realistically, I could have skipped the freak out because EBT was in here and other people, and they were wrong as they were right. They were right in a way and they were wrong in a way. I just needed to, for my own edification and my own code, I'm trained in a way where I just need to avoid, if I'm going to give the system what it says it has to have for me to register my vehicle, right? If I'm going to choose to do those things, then I need to do that in a way where the system can't credibly say, well, Benton committed a fraud by the way that he generated a document. What I did was I went out and got their document and I put on their document what they specifically told me they wanted to see on their document, meaning I did not break the law. So I had people telling me, just sign it yourself. And I'm like, well, number one, they're not handwriting analysts. Well, I'm like, okay, that's true. Number one, this person is from Colombia and thinks he's famous and did an autograph. This dude literally gave me his autograph on the bill of sale, or on the title rather. Now, did I eventually figure out how to put his fucking autograph onto the bill of sale? As they said, hey man, as long as he signs this thing, we're fine. Okay. But I did not get a pen and forge his fucking signature. That's against the law. See? But does his signature appear on a bill of sale? Yes. See what I'm saying? It's like, yes, I understand it sounds like semantics, but it's not. And that's where the CBO crowd, that triggers their gag reflex or their disgust. And it's their fingernails on the chalkboard in some way. Well, surprise, surprise, some of us, as part of our interface into this matrix, part of, our discrete interface, probably in concert with our own fucking abuse that some of us most undoubtedly suffered as children, right? And the fact is, if a child is sexually abused at a very young age, like at a daycare, for example, a corporate daycare, that as far as we know, the fucking CIA could have inroads. It could just be also a CIA front in ways, because remember, multi-layered, multifaceted, and it could have been an organized system of, hey, or even just certain kids. Let's make sure to fucking some version of a goddamn incubus into this, spiritually into this kid, right? Because if the Fitz Springmeyer, satanic ritual abuse, if that's all real, right? I mean, this has got to be possible. Even looking at the, what's the Michael? There's a guy with a famous name, Michael Aquino or whatever. Is that the guy's name? Aquino. You guys remember this fella? It's not quite time ago, but I guess it is. And all of that, and that was portrayed through the media as more or less a systematized, dare I say, corporatized version of ritualized abuse, right? And the thing is, man, humans are very, very tapped in and astute. So, the parent knows something's happened when they go pick their kid up. They may not consciously know what, but something occurred. So when you tie that in, with things that might have happened
even at a spiritual level with the child. And I've talked about the child being spiritually perfect, but then, look at how quickly the realm rushes in to defile God's creation. If I'm willing to think and speak in those terms, right? Outside of a religious context, which is probably not even possible in the first place. Get some folks checking me out, very interested in my activities. But anyway, I think I'm making my point, and I do. It's a bit unfortunate to end on what may be viewed as a sour note, but I don't see it that way. Um, it's progress, if not just for myself, and my path is progress. I'll tie up by saying how interesting it is to be a person in the realm, and most folks ain't here, y'all. Out of all the human beings that have, if we're willing to believe that all of these humans have come before us, if there can be an estimated, what is that aggregate amount? What is that in aggregate? The total number of humans. Well, if we look at that group, I can certainly realize that, well, most folks ain't here. Most of them ain't here. Well, I'm here, best I can tell. You're here, best I can tell. What a blessing. And in the Talcottian sense, praise God. Thanks for watching. Bye.